as you and I are recording on a Wednesday morning, last night on NXT, we saw Frankie Kazarian and Joe Hendry, who's gotten quite a bit of buzz. You know, he actually made the Billboard charts across the pond. And I'm curious, what do you think of Joe Hendry's debut in NXT and this big WWE NXT crossover? I think this is catching a lot of people by surprise.
Yeah, it is surprising, pleasantly so. I think getting more guys involved and getting more TV time for multiple people is good. I've called some of Joe Hendry's matches back in the day. He's a good talent. He's a good talent, and it's good that he's got a very solid job because he's got the potential to do really well. I watched a little bit of NXT. Wednesday night's a heavy, or Tuesday is a heavy wrestling day.
It is, yeah.
So I was thoroughly enjoyed the shows I sampled, and I watched What Killed WCW, the question that has no answer in my view. So anyway, it was good. Joe Hendry though is a good talent. They've done a nice job there. They, pronoun boy, meaning the NXT people, talent wise, they got a good eye for talent, and they're getting people that aren't body Donnas. No offense to the late Chris Candido, but they've done a good job of recruiting and signing some workers, some talents that know how to get it done in the ring, and I think that's extremely important. And I'm impressed by their roster. It's pretty diverse. You see some green spots, but you see that with everybody.
That's right.
Because people try to work too fast, and the faster you work, you forget things like how to throw a good punch. It's just bam, 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 and some of those bams are weak, and so all they got to do is slow down a little bit,
right?
Lay their stuff in, and it looks better, feels better, is better. So anyway, I think Joe's got a break there. They got a big break, so I hope he takes advantage of it.
It's pretty exciting to see what's possible with this crossover. I mean, not too terribly long ago, it felt like, that was just never possible. I wanted to ask you about that. Like, you were with Vince for a long, long time, and I'm sure it came up on more than one occasion. And I know every now and again we would see Jim Cornette bring some fellows from Smoky Mountain over, and certainly we would send some talent down to Memphis to work with Jarrett and Lawler. And then, of course, in the late 90s, we saw a little bit of a crossover with ECW. Was there ever, I mean, do you recall there being a time where it was seriously discussed? We should do something with TNA. I mean, I know there were those one-offs where, Christian and Flair did a little talent exchange for the Hall of Fame and that sort of thing. But do you recall there being a line in the sand like, no, we're not doing that, stop bringing it up? Or were those discussions ever even broached?
Not really, to be honest with you. And I don't know if for any particular reason. I don't think so. I thought that, we kind of try to help people out. And obviously the biggest help was to ECW.
Right.
Because they were in a cash flow issue, and not a good one. And they had a lot of good talents who were hungry and wanted to get the WWE experience. So no, I think it worked out the way that it should have in the end, because there's a certain group of talents there, like the Dudleys and others, that got a break, and they got hired, and I think that was pretty cool. That were certainly deserving, and they were good talents. They were skilled. So I don't think we ever had any elongated discussions about things like that. We had discussions, but primarily the discussions concerned, Conrad, the fact that we're looking for talent. So the reason that we had the discussions was to continue to lay the foundation to bring new talents in and create some new faces. And we did that successfully.
I know that Vince was always big on owning IP, which is why we
Right.
would see a lot of established wrestlers come in and they had their name and act and character presented a certain way. And then Vince would often want to change their name and just own that likeness. And I understand that.
Yeah.
But I am curious, like when you first went to work with Vince before WCW had their explosion in '96 with the combination of Nitro and the NWO, was it ever discussed? I mean, well, we saw it in all the after magazines, these fantasy bookings of what if this WWF superstar wrestled this WCW champion sort of thing. Was that ever discussed that you can recall? Some sort
N-
of crossover opportunity with WCW?
Not to any extent. It's just they were the enemy. We didn't feel like they would be motivated to participate, cooperate. They had their own thing going on. So no, not really. You'd think that at some point in time it would have been, and maybe it would have been good if it happened, but I don't recall any extended conversations or planning periods to talk about it.
I just find it interesting that, it did happen with smaller promotions. Like, as we're talking through this, I remember there was an NWA presence in 1998. Now, granted, it wasn't presented highline. I mean, it was just lost and forgotten about somewhere in the middle of the card. But I wanted to know, like, since you've seen, obviously Vince is no longer there, and it does seem this new regime is more open to the idea. I mean, we just saw this past week where it was announced that AJ Styles is actually going to be working a match for Noah, a promotion over in Japan.
All right.
And as
Yeah.
you and I are recording just last night, we saw even more TNA talent show up at an NXT show. I guess I'm curious, since we know that things are changing. I mean, AJ, even last week on SmackDown, referenced New Japan Pro Wrestling. He said the words Ring of Honor on Fox. I mean, that probably wouldn't have happened just a handful of years ago.
Right.
Could you see a scenario where WWE and AEW have some sort of crossover?
It's hard to see it, but nothing's impossible apparently. Uh, but it's something I can't fathom right now. I can't fathom it right now. I can't see. Uh, I think WWE will take in boarders and renters for their space, but to keep them permanently might be a stretch. But I think it's a good idea. The wrestling fans, I've said this before on our show here, they like new, they like change, they like surprises, and there's not too many great talents that are working. You got to wherever you can find them, and they're willing to. Who's not willing to come to WWE or AEW because the work is steady and the pay is good, and they know they're getting paid. So, but I don't know. I don't think that I don't see extended partnerships. But and I hope I'm wrong because I think it's good for wrestling when you got new talent in and they're getting an opportunity. They're motivated, they're skilled. It's good stuff. So I'm glad I'm enjoying the current climate, Conrad, of pro wrestling. I like the fact these guys are getting a shot to become stars, bigger stars, and develop their game and give them hope that there's bigger money down the road if they deliver. and at least I hope so. At least I hope so. It's the same thing, I'm for the wrestling community, and so I want I want these guys to get every opportunity they can to become stars. And when you become a star, you get the opportunity to work more and earn more money. And at the end of the day, quite frankly, without being crass or coarse, that's the bottom line: earning money.